Imagine the following scene. A middle-aged man calmly boards a Boeing 727 airplane. He is dressed in a formal suit, wearing dark sunglasses and carrying a small suitcase. There is a bomb in the suitcase. In 6 hours, this man will disappear forever. Thousands of people, including the best FBI agents, will speculate, who is he alive or dead, and did he manage to spend the hundreds of thousands of dollars he earned from his daring operation? What was his name? In the pocket of his suit, he has an airline ticket. In the passenger name field, it says Dan Cooper. The name, of course, is fake, but it is under this name that he will go down in history. So, November 24th, 1971, rural America, Portland Airport, Oregon. Cooper walks to the back of the cabin, orders himself a bourbon, and lights a cigarette. Back then, it was still allowed. The plane takes off. A few minutes after takeoff, the man in the suit takes a note out of his pocket. He hands it to the stewardess. Without reading it, she puts it in her pocket, thinking the man wants to get acquainted and has written his phone number on the paper. After a brief pause, the stranger leans toward her. "You should read this," he says. "I have a bomb." By the way, the note itself has not survived. The hijacker took it back. The stewardess later recalled that it said something like, "Sit next to me. There's a bomb in the suitcase. I'll blow it up." The woman obeyed, sat down next to him, and asked him to open the suitcase. Inside were 8 red cylindrical objects, wrapped in wires and connected to some kind of device. No one ever found out whether it was a real bomb or a convincing fake. But the stewardess believed it. The stranger told her to go to the cockpit and relay his demands to the pilot. In Seattle, the plane was to be refueled, and then the hijacker was to be given 4 working parachutes and a bag of money. $200,000 in small bills. It's a large sum, but a realistic one. In today's money, that's about $1.5 million. While the air traffic controllers were contacting the police, everything remained calm on the hijacked plane. The stranger ordered another round of bourbon and a glass of water. He paid for the bourbon in cash and even tried to leave a tip. Overall, he behaved peacefully and courteously. One of the other stewardesses later even admitted that she found him to be a very interesting man. While Cooper was charming the stewardesses, there was panic on the ground, but not too much. Hijackings of airplanes in America at that time happened quite often. According to the rules back then, baggage was hardly inspected, and passengers' personal belongings weren't touched at all. In 1972, just a year after Cooper, there were 31 attempted hijackings in the US. While the plane was flying to Seattle, the local police contacted the FBI. The situation was this: the hijacker had 40 hostages and something that looked like a bomb. It was impossible to storm the plane without casualties. It was decided to hand over the money and parachutes in exchange for the hostages. $200,000 were brought in from the nearest banks. They managed to write down some of the serial numbers, but there simply wasn't enough time to do it for all the bill. By that time, the hijacked plane had already been circling over Seattle Airport for 2 hours. The passengers were told that there had been some kind of mix-up on the ground. At that point, they suspected nothing. Cooper communicated with the FBI through the pilots, sending flight attendants to them. One of them later said that Cooper apparently knew the local geography well. For example, from the air he recognized the city of Tacoma and mentioned the nearby military bases. He refused the parachutes from those bases that were offered to him and demanded regular civilian ones instead. At 5:30 p.m., the hijacked Boeing landed in Seattle. Cooper demanded that they land on the farthest runway and turn off the cabin light. Only then did the passengers start to suspect something, but everything went smoothly. The rear stairway was lowered. The parachutes and a bag of dollars were handed over to Cooper. He really did let everyone go. Only the pilots, the flight engineer, and one of the 3 stewardesses, the one who thought he was attractive, remained on board. The FBI agents didn't really understand what the hijacker was planning to do next, but he demanded to fly to Mexico. And when it turned out there wasn't enough fuel for that, he ordered a stop in Nevada for the next refueling. Frankly speaking, the chances of that were low. There were military planes in the air, and in Nevada, a SWAT team was ready for an assault. At the crisis headquarters, people breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed the hijacker was a fool after all. As it turned out, they relaxed too soon. The plane took off at 7:40 p.m. 2 fighter jets followed it in its blind spot. Cooper examines the parachute. The specific idea of giving him fake or even defective ones was, of course, thoroughly discussed in several meetings. But since he specifically asked for 4, the FBI agents thought he might be planning to jump with hostages. So the parachutes provided were completely real, with one small important caveat, which we will definitely need to mention a bit later on. After checking the parachutes, Cooper asked the main question. Tell me, friends, this convenient rear stairway at the back of the plane, how does it open? After receiving all the necessary instructions through the stewardess, the hijacker sends her to the cockpit to the pilots and tells her to lock the door behind her. Meanwhile, the plane is heading to Reno, Nevada, where it is already expected. Dusk. The weather is simply terrible. The Boeing is flying straight through a thunderstorm. A warning light comes on in the cockpit. The rear stairway is lowered, the plane vibrates, and the pressure drops. At approximately 8:13 p.m., the mysterious hijacker jumps into complete darkness with the money and the bomb. No one ever saw the man who called himself Dan Cooper again. The plane landed in Reno 2 hours later. The police and FBI searched the cabin from top to bottom. Cooper had truly vanished. He left behind 2 parachutes. As a result of the search, a black tie, a tie clip, and 8 cigarette butts were found. The fighter pilots who were tracking the hijacked plane missed Cooper's jump. Search teams were sent to the probable area of his landing, and it turned out that this area was simply enormous. The plane was flying at varying speeds. The exact time of the jump was uncertain. There was a margin of error of 100 kilometers. It is believed that he jumped over the Lewis River, not far from the city of Portland. The forests and riverbanks were searched so thoroughly that several unidentified bodies were found, as well as the corpse of a girl who had gone missing several weeks before the incident. But no trace of Cooper was discovered. Meanwhile, the story was making headlines across the entire country. It was at that moment, thanks to journalists, that Dan Cooper became D.B. Cooper. While checking suspects, the police interviewed a certain D.B. Cooper from the state of Oregon. The police had no evidence. It was simply a case of matching names. That's how the name ended up in the newspapers, thanks to journalistic laziness and a thirst for sensationalism. Based on the testimonies of the stewardesses and hostages, a composite sketch was created. Everyone who saw the hijacker says that the sketch really does look a lot like him. But it didn't help to find Cooper. 3 weeks after the hijacking, a letter arrived at the Los Angeles Times editorial office, beginning with, "Don't consider me a modern Robin Hood. Unfortunately, I have only 14 months left to live. Hijacking the plane was the fastest and most profitable way for me to secure the last days of my life." Whether the hijacker is real or an imposter, no one knows. He claims that he is not a professional criminal, sees nothing romantic in such a way of making money, and does not intend to repeat his experience. Whether this is true or just someone's joke is unclear. Soon several more letters arrive at the same editorial office, clearly written by different people. This does nothing to clarify the situation. The public continues to wonder what actually happened to Cooper. Did he manage to survive the jump? Did the money with the recorded serial numbers ever turn up? Was this a flawless crime, or did he make a mistake after all? Let's start with a misstep that may have cost Cooper his life. Out of the 4 parachutes he received, he took 2. One of them was very old, and the other was actually a dummy. The police grabbed it in the rush and confusion. It turns out that Cooper didn't know anything about parachutes. The dummy had markings that any parachutist would have recognized. So, Cooper jumped into the stormy night sky with very little chance of survival. Next, we need to recall the weather conditions themselves and the landing region. Professional parachutists almost immediately stated that jumping from such a height, in such conditions, and in that kind of clothing is suicide. Cooper faced hypothermia, unexpected gusts of wind, and terrible visibility. Below, there was a river and forest. To land in such conditions and come out unscathed, you not only had to be a master parachutist, but also a very, very, very lucky person. In 1980, 9 years after the jump, an 8-year-old boy was walking with his parents along the banks of the Columbia River near the city of Vancouver. While digging in the riverside sand, the child discovered 3 packages. Inside each was a bundle of money. The serial numbers on the bills matched those that the police had once collected to hand over to Cooper. The Lewis River flows into the Columbia River, the very river over which the hijacked plane had flown. It would seem the answer is simple. Cooper died, his body fell into the river, and the money washed up on the shore, where it lay for 9 years. But there was one interesting detail. In 2 of the 3 bundles, tied with rubber bands, there were 100 bills each, while in the third, only 90. Exactly 10 bills were missing. Moreover, after laboratory analysis, it was discovered that the money could have been in the water only in the spring, and specifically in the spring, not in winter or autumn. This was determined by the remnants of algae. In other words, the bills ended up in the water 4 months after the famous jump. The words of the investigator who studied the new evidence are well known. Cooper continues to mock us. By the way, not a single one of the bills with serial numbers recorded by the FBI ever appeared in circulation again. No fewer questions remain regarding Cooper's identity. There are indirect reasons to believe that he was not an American. The pseudonym he chose was taken from a Franco-Belgian comic book. The main character there is a Canadian Air Force pilot, and the comic itself was never translated into English. One of the flight attendants noted that in conversation, Cooper used strange turns of phrase as if English was not his native language. The most likely theory is that Cooper was a French-speaking Canadian. They were planning to conduct DNA tests, but the 8 cigarette butts found on the plane mysteriously disappeared from the case file. On the tie, which supposedly belonged to Cooper, particles of strontium and titanium were found in 1971. In the 70s, only engineers really had access to these materials. There is even a theory that Cooper was an aviation engineer. This would explain his good knowledge of airport operations and his perfect choice of aircraft. He bought a ticket specifically for a Boeing with a rear stairway, which was convenient for a parachute jump. On the other hand, if that's the case, why did he know so little about parachutes? By the way, about the parachutes. After Cooper refused the military options, the police had to urgently look for civilian ones. They found them at a local parachuting school. So, in 2013, the owner of that school was found dead in his own home. He had a head injury. Everyone remembered Cooper again, but the police claim it was just a regular robbery. Of course, that doesn't stop conspiracy theorists. They have several theories at once. For example, that Cooper was an engineer working on secret aircraft, or that he was a secret agent because he wore dark glasses, or even an alien, hence the oddities in his speech. Be that as it may, on November 24, 1971, B. Cooper jumped straight into legend. Since miracles usually don't happen, most likely, somewhere in a remote forest, a skeleton is still hanging from parachute cords, and next to it is a bag of money. But that's just not interesting. People want to believe that the mysterious hijacker touched down lightly, unhooked his parachute, straightened his impeccable suit, and walked off into the night, whistling something. By now, he could be over 90, and if he's alive, he's watching various YouTube videos about the mystery of B. Cooper, and laughing. By the way, the last name, and in general the image of Cooper, might seem vaguely familiar. Remember the year 1989? A strange man in a sharp black suit is dictating something into a recorder as he drives into a small town called Twin Peaks. His name is D. Cooper, Agent Dale Bartholomew Cooper. And now you know why he's called that. If you enjoyed the video, subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and write a comment. There's still a lot of interesting stuff ahead.